So, as we told you in the last two segments, according to Sarah Carter and John Solomon's reporting, Susan Rice, John Brennan, and Loretta Lynch were cleared to, quote, request and consume unmasked intelligence reports. So, will the mainstream media cover that bombshell? Here with reaction from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, and from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow. Jay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Break this down legally from us from the issue of surveillance,
right,
unmasking, leaking intelligence, based on, she's not even in the administration anymore.
No, at the time that she said that she was aware of the information, the intelligence, she was no longer an employee of the State Department. So what you have to ask is, the first question a lawyer asks is...
Well, she was actually the former Assistant Defense Secretary.
Defense Secretary. So
right.
The first question you have to ask, how did a former Defense Secretary find out about this information when she was gone? So that brings up felony number one. Who leaked her that information? That's number one. Number two, we were concerned that the Obama administration officials involved in this would be known by the Trump administration. Well, guess what? The President of the United States is Donald Trump, so of course he would know that. So then it brings up the third issue. And the third issue is here, what in the world did they think that they had that they could justify doing this? And Sean, I said on your program weeks ago, Loretta Lynch, John Brennan, these were the ones to be looking at. Look who signed off on these orders. Look who wanted this unmasking. So you've got the whole issue of unlawful unmaskings, leaked information. Leaked information, by the way, then to a third party who was no longer a government official.
By the way, it was more than that. According to one report, she was an advisor to Hillary Clinton at the time.
Well, that would even make it worse. But, you know, at that point, you're pouring felony on top of felony because...
Do you think this woman, based on what she said on that show, is in legal jeopardy? Or
I would tell her to hire a lawyer. Don't call me, but she needs to hire a lawyer.
Immediately.
Immediately, because she's, well, first of all, she's going on television talking about how she got information. They were trying to hide it from the incoming administration.
Yeah.
So the FBI needs to, or the Department of Justice should impanel this grand jury tonight.
When she talks about, you know, getting this information to colleagues on the Hill, right. Is she talking about leaking?
Well, what colleagues on the Hill?
Right.
She is now in private life. What does a colleague on the Hill mean? Friends of hers that are on the other party?
Wow, how could she not know what she was saying here?
That's what's so, Sean, what's so bizarre about all of this is, you know that the Loretta Lynch, they knew better than all of this, but they did it anyways. They thought they'd get away with it impunity.
Tom?
They also thought the other nominee was going to be president.
What's your take, Tom, legally?
Well, you know, as Jay, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been doing this scandal work for 20 years almost. And I know the hallmarks of a scandal. You've got administration officials working improperly with outside former officials to launder information that they're not allowed to send out and around. This reminds me of the FBI Filegate scandal under Clinton, where they were looking at raw data from FBI files in the White House, or at least had access to it. Here they were accessing raw intelligence data that was arguably protected by the Privacy Act and other laws if you violate, require criminal sanctions in theory. And then they're also working with Congress on this. So here you've got the elements of the scandal and where the investigations need to go. Not only a criminal investigation, but getting back to the so-called congressional investigation, whether by the intelligence committees or a select committee. This is what they need to look at. Who the Obama administration was working with on the outside and on the inside to improperly disseminate this classified material.
Let's go back to the legal. Again, surveillance. There's legitimate surveillance.
Sure.
But you're not supposed to unmask an American that gets picked up.
Well, and if you get unmasked improperly, it could be a felony. It could be also a civil action.
But she admits here.
No,
quote,
she's bragging about it.
Yeah, she said, if they found out how we knew, what we knew about the Trump staff. Right. So they had to be unmasked to know.
Of course that. So how did this level of person outside of government end up with unmasked intelligence on the President of the United States or his team? How in the world how did Loretta Lynch, who's, you know, by the way, doesn't mind meeting on an airplane with President Clinton, how does she justify having this out there? How did she justify the sign-off? And then how did this individual, this Ms. Farkas, get this information?
And when she talks about...
And then there are friends on the Hill. What are they
friends
talking
on the Hill,
here?
urging colleagues...
No, Sean,
does that sound like she's talking about leaking the information?
Well, yeah, she wanted to make sure it was there so that the Trump administration didn't destroy it or some statement like that. Here's the concern. The concern is the intelligence apparatus in the United States has rules that they have to follow like every other agency. And it appears that in the waning days, or maybe the last year of the former administration, they viewed those laws as advisory opinions,
In
not
other
law.
words, our intelligence, at least at some level, was politicized.
Completely.
And people's names were amassed, and it was shared?
Yes, and I go back to James Comey, who just days ago goes on air in a hearing in Congress and says we're investigating Trump associates in Russia, but well, of course he never wants to disclose an investigation, then asked if in fact he was investigating, after he was investigating the leaks of classified information, what his real response is, what he actually said was not he wasn't doing an investigation, he said, I'm not willing to say that because I'm not willing to say they were classified. Now, everybody at this point knows it's classified information, but that's how they're playing it, that close. And what the Republicans need to do is ask the next question. For instance, when the president tweeted out, in quotes, wiretap, which we all know is surveillance,
right.
Why didn't anybody at that hearing say, well, let's put the wiretap portion of it, which hardly anybody uses wiretap. Was he surveilled? They wouldn't have answered the question.
Well, the leadership of the FBI is a real... The leadership of the FBI is a real problem. Comey refused to deal with adequately the mishandling of classified information by Hillary Clinton. And then now by the Obama administration, he doesn't want to look at that. He's as political an FBI director as anyone we've had.
How big is this on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I think this is gigantic. Remember, you were talking about Watergate. Watergate was the cover-up. That was the problem. Here, the act itself could be the problem. And that's
and then maybe a cover-up on top.
On top of that. So you could have one on top of another.
It's going to get interesting, and I think the media will end up with egg on their face, as usual. They're always wrong.